love my iron. I treated myself to a new iron. I have all the features. Number one, you can use regular water, not distilled water. Number two, I have the retractable thing, and my gosh, this is how I live. I threw the water clear over on the wall. He wanted to be owned by someone. And I thought, you know, maybe I should just fly him to Austin and move him into my house. He's sweet as he can be. He would stay home when I went out and not complain. And all he would want from me is that I told him what to do and that I was kind to him. The trick was that I would have to participate in making the anal sex work, and that was the big
So, bird in my window tells me tomorrow, me no tornado carries me off. Yeah, pulls me from bed and dashes my head in, no buries me halfway across the globe. But
what does feminism have to learn from doing 60 and 70?
Well, I think, of course, a movement reflects the society in which the movement is, you know, so we're in a patriarchal society which values women more as potential childbearers, you know, when we're young, in the center of life. And there's a feeling of irrelevance, you know, in this culture to older women, more than many other cultures, as we know. So I suppose the movement absorbs that somewhat. But I think it's a special problem for a special loss, I would say, for the women's movement, because it is true in a kind of general way. I mean, I'm not trying to say this is true of everybody, but in a kind of general way, that women do get more radical as we get older. Our pattern tends to be the opposite of men, except the men who are here, who get more conservative with age because they gain power as they get older.
Yeah.
Women lose power and get radicalized by that loss of power.
Well, I wanted to go to Ecuador. My friend's living down there now, but I kind of told her about my XXX show and my foray into XXX dominatrix role. And I don't know, she just freaked out, said she didn't think I would fit in down there with her friends. It would freak them out. I would just be too much. So I kind of got uninvited to go there. I don't have a house, I don't have a boyfriend, I don't have any pets. I don't want any pets, and I don't want any boyfriends either, but it just seems like, I don't know why I'm coming back.
Remember the Keepin' Austin Weird house? The local icon is getting a makeover. Alexis Patterson joins us live with a story you'll see only on CBS 42. Alexis?
This home off of Mopac attracted quite a bit of attention for years as the Keepin' Austin Weird house. Now it's looking decidedly more normal, garnering even more attention. Drive past 1825 Waterston Avenue, and maybe you notice some eclectic touches. The yellow door, the gilded bird cages hanging from trees. But these unusual details are just remnants of what used to symbolize the Keep Austin Weird movement. The First Lady of Austin Weirdness, Aralyn Hughes, put her house on the market. The two-story home was getting hard on her knees.
It's like people do when they get a divorce. They go, why didn't I do that a long time ago? And it's a nice change, because I brought weird downtown.
Did she ever? One thing's for sure, weirdness lives wherever Aralyn does.
Forgot my whip. I should have sent that to storage.
What's that?
What is that? Whoa! I don't have a vibrator, so don't think it's that. I complain all the time to my friends who are in my age group around, I'm 64 this year, and they say, oh, I can't go on a vacation, I can't buy that dress, I can't spend my money. Well, you know, I'm saving, what are you saving it for? Well, I'm saving it for a rainy day. Rainy day? The rainy day's here, you're 64 years old! Oh my gosh, it's a dang toothbrush. I've lived in Austin since 77. That's a long time. I was here when the Armadillo was here. And I was here when Austin City Limits just started. Jim Swift interviewed me for Out on the Porch, and I thought he was going to ask me about my real estate business and maybe my pig and maybe my pig car. I didn't know what he was going to ask me, but I was kind of all ready. And he said, okay, we're ready to start, cameras running? Okay. I'm here today with Aralyn Hughes, sitting on her back porch with her pig in the backyard and her colorful house. And Aralyn, the first question I have for you is, what's it like to be an eccentric? And of course I was like, eccentric? I'm not eccentric. I'm just a little girl from Oklahoma, you know, from the Great Plains. What do you get? Eccentric? Eccentric means people are crazy. They act funny.
I tasted sweet when I was the bad twin.
Welcome to the psychiatric hotline. If you're obsessive compulsive, press 1 repeatedly. If you have multiple personalities, press 2, 3, and 4.
I was running a medical clinic, getting my real estate license, and starting a real estate business. And I was also a lobbyist at the state capitol, and I was on every board and commission in this town.
If you're schizophrenic, wait, and a little voice will tell you which number to press.
I was on the National Commission on the Status of Women, and I was a party animal. I had the best parties ever, and I had a social life to beat the band.
If you're codependent, ask someone to press 5. If you have bipolar disorder, hang up and call again.
I've never known what button to push. I don't know how the conversation came up, but he said, you know, I always wondered what happened to you. And I said, what do you mean, what happened to me? And he said, well, you used to be so normal. Okay, Mark, we on?
Yeah, take off.
Okay, this is May 10th, 1986. And conventional, and just a regular person. You were just my regular aunt. And then started wearing all these wild clothes and doing your hair so weird, and not believing in God, and doing all these weird things in theater. What happened? The only thing I can answer is that I didn't know any better till I was about 30 years old, because I lived with my parents and then I got married to somebody. I was trying to follow the rules, I was trying to be conventional, I was trying to do the right thing. And when it didn't work out and I ended up getting a divorce, which I never expected in my entire life, I just went, well, I've lived my life for other people, followed the rules, done the things you're supposed to, and that doesn't seem to work for me. So I'm going to quit that. That was the thing about that guy in Denver that was the submissive. I mean, he didn't drink or didn't smoke, and he has all kinds of skills for around the house. He's a housekeeper and a cook. He made it clear to me that he was not homosexual, but because of his training with the other women, he was used to having anal sex. And that was kind of his thing. He had tried to be in relationships with girls that he really liked, but he just had lived too unusual of a life to be able to really associate with anybody in a relationship. So he wanted to be owned by someone. He's kind of on his own now, and he's lived his life living with a dominatrix and being told what to do and how to do it, and also taken care of. And he just now doesn't know what to do with himself. Now here's the other thing, look at it. There's always something going on. I mean, every apartment down, every place I live in Austin has got these fire trucks and these EMS things. I mean, I know they're necessary, and I feel sorry for the people that they're going to see, but I mean, it's just a part of being in a big city. months ago, I was driving down Barton Hills Drive, and all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I saw this black car, and it came right over to my lane. It was coming right at me. There was no time to think. It was just bam! I opened my eyes. Everything was white, and I wondered if I was dead. I felt like I was going to the light, painless, peaceful, and then I heard voices. Are you okay? I'm sorry, it was all my fault. I lost control of the car. Oh, and I realized all that white was the airbags. I'd never seen airbags that close. So I went over and I said hi, and they said, are you all right? And I said, oh yeah, just some blood and some scraped up. I sent ER packing because I didn't need to go there. And they said, we think you ought to call your ICE person. What? What's an ICE person? An ICE person is the person you can call in the middle of the night, the person that will drop anything they're doing and come to your rescue, and it's the person that you have in your phone. You put the little sticker on your phone and you put a person's name and you put ICE beside it so that if you're ever unconscious or there's anything that happens where you wander off and don't know where you're going or whatever, they can get in your phone, look for the word ICE, and know who to call in case of emergency.
This is Mom, honey. Hope you're having a nice day. We're celebrating our 55th today, you know, and rejoicing over our visit with you and also Jay Martin.
Now, I grew up in a real small town, kind of a Mayberry-ish, quiet town on Route 66 in Oklahoma.
And I'm grateful for our two kids. They're great.
I called it a peek and plum town. Peek around the corner and you're plumb out of town.
I hope you are having a nice day and everything going smoothly for us as it can be.
In our town, everybody knew everybody. Nobody locked their doors. And when the church bell tolled, we were all there. In our town, I felt very safe and very secure. And nobody in our town really needed a nice person, except when things went terribly wrong.
Now, Aralyn, wait a minute before you turn. What's that on your chest?
Oh, well, the timing is, you know, I've had these 3 little heart procedures, and this is the week I have to wear the heart monitor.
Now, in the normal human being, there is an average pulse beat. It all depends on how much strain we put on the heart as to how fast it will beat for us. Of course, it has a limit beyond which it would cease to beat at all. And of course, it isn't only a physical strain that may be dangerous, there may be also a mental strain or an emotional strain. And if the strain becomes too great, then that person becomes a victim of heart disease.
Your whole focus is about that pounding heart, and you can't sit down, you can't lay down, you can't watch TV, you can't read, you can't do anything. So I called a cab. I went down, I got in the cab, and I said, take me to the Brackenridge emergency room. And he said, well, you don't look too sick. You look pretty healthy to me. You're gonna die in my cab? Maybe I'm gonna die in your cab, just take me there. When I arrived, I went to the front desk, and I said, I'd like to check in. My name's Aralyn Hughes. And I had some problems. I'm not having them again. And I was by myself at home, and I thought, I just don't want to die there. And nobody'd find me for days. And I just thought I'd be more comfortable here in the emergency room. And so I don't want you to bother. If you can work me in sometime, I know you have the helicopters coming with the people, and you have the car wrecks and all that. Just take care of those people first. I'll just be waiting. I waited for hours. And then they took me back, and I waited for hours more while they did the testing. And then the doctor walks in the room, and he says, everything is perfect. You are perfectly normal. There is nothing wrong with you. Now, I have talked to the woman at the front desk, and in that conversation, I found some things out that makes me think that you are disassociated, in shock, and in total terror. So I think the next step for us is a psychiatrist. Why is it that nobody ever thinks I'm normal?
She's got this groovy place. It's like a loft, I think, down here, walking distance from the Capitol.
It's hard for me to give up control. It's hard for me to give up being in charge. My parents taught me that you go to the doctor and you do what he says, because he's the doctor, not you.
You're getting into cutesy mode suddenly because Brandon's here, and I don't want cutesy.
Right, so I'm
provocative.
confused of how it's supposed to be.
Okay, put the nose away. It needs to be in a way close to Marilyn. It needs to be provocative without being like funny Marilyn, but sexy Marilyn. Do your best sexy Marilyn. It's a role. It's a role.
You always get good people, and then you trust them with their expertise. So I felt like I had the best, and I was going to trust her, and I was not going to try to be in control. It wasn't easy, and but I had to submit to that because obviously I was not able to do that myself. One of the most difficult roles that I had, trying to be sexy.
Well, you're an actress.
Yeah, I'm an actress, do it.
I hadn't seen Aralyn since she sold me the house that I currently live in. Maybe it's been 16, 17 years since we did a show together called In the West.
The doctor says I'm not supposed to talk about it because it upsets me.
In the West was a monologue show that happened in the mid-'80s in Austin as a response to Richard Avedon's photographic exhibit called In the American West.
Mr. Avedon, if you was to take a true picture of me, it would have literally hundreds of people in it. But these people in your pictures, they look like nobody knows them.
As fate would have it, I drew Aralyn's name out of a hat, which meant I would direct her in a piece that Tim Mateer had written called Why I Did It.
But it was a constant battle between Aralyn and I, because I was very proud of my words. And she likes to make it up as she goes along, and it took me years to appreciate that.
Of course, they used that in court. Said the body wasn't even cold, and I was down there trying to get the insurance money. Jesus Christ.
Besides acting in the West, Aralyn wrote a monologue for John Hawkes called Dad in a Nutshell, which eventually got adapted into the film version of the piece.
Come to find out, my daddy sold my livestock to send me to school. That money I was spending and drinking away was my own money. Yeah, and pork chops we were eating at that very instant turned out to be Tinkerbell. Prize winning hog at the county fair.
Hey, Rob. Okay, now wait back. Hey, Rob.
This picture hints at the common idea of bestiality. Dr. Sorokin, the renowned sociologist at Harvard, says that today the newsstands, quote, depict the world as a sort of human zoo inhabited by raped, mutilated, and murdered females. And this one, with its overtones of bestiality.
For real estate agent Aralyn Hughes, art and humor are a big part of her life. In fact, her life has become something of a work of art ever since she went pig crazy over one pig in particular.
This is my pot-bellied pig. Her name is Ara, and I named her after my mother. If I lived in Waco or Midland or someplace like that, they would think I was a raving lunatic. But here in Austin, they just wait.
Whoop, come on. There we go.
Ara the pig is Aralyn's longtime companion. She won this pig at the end of the run of the theater version of In the West. When Aralyn and I start our sessions, Ara is now 16 years old, and she lives with Aralyn in her downtown home office, which is also an art gallery, art studio, and workshop space. All her places have always been rather noteworthy. She had taken an old office building and made it a home. So all of it was very, very entertaining to absorb and take in. It was supposed to be our first meeting to talk about doing her show, but it ended up being more like a museum tour on many levels. She took out the material itself. She had so much writings in every shape and form, notebooks, napkins, boxes, and I'm looking at her like, you think this is one show, Aralyn?
I was always very attracted to dolls.
Because that was what I was hearing that was going to be the challenge in working with Aralyn, is that there was a lot of nostalgia, and that's all well and good, but if it's not in the present moment, it's really going to be more like a vanity show and not social experiment, as I used to call it. I would invite my students to really go deep into what they are about and figure out what they can actively participate in now, which will yield a monologue or a solo performance that's very pertinent, but that's also very authentic to them, but it's not lost in the past.
This is my Tony. He keeps me alive. Tony's worked with me for how long? 7 years. 7 years. Tony is homeless, and so he works periodically for me and some of my friends and other people that, and he's real honest and he's real hardworking and he's really a great guy, and he's special. And so he can tell you what it's like to work with me, because I've often thought to myself, Tony, because he's been in my household with me for so long, he knows me in terms of my patience, my anger, my rage, and who I am probably as much as anybody in the whole world. What would I do without you, Tony? You're probably the only guy in my life that cares whether I'm happy or not.
Right. Yep. Non-working number. This is not good. We'll try the other one. Hi, this is Aralyn Hughes in Austin, Texas. We met and sat out on the bench at the hotel at the BDSM conference in Denver. And I've thought about you a lot since then, and I've thought about calling and haven't until now. Can you believe that?
If you know Aralyn now, and try to imagine that she actually got educated as a homemaker who's supposed to go out and teach the children of tomorrow about homemaking.
Hear that? That's Tupperware's airtight promise to lock in flavor and lock out air.
I majored in home economics. I taught home economics in Muskogee, Oklahoma. And before that, I was the president of Tri Delta Social Sorority at Oklahoma State University. For God's sake, I thought I was going to be the stitch and stir queen. And in a way, I am.
It was like, what? I would have never guessed this at all. This is someone who, for 20-some years in her Austin Weird House, purposefully took the stove out so she wouldn't get anywhere near it. And so I was fascinated by this idea of Aralyn, the home economics teacher, and I thought, you know, I think that is going to hold all of these shows, and I mean shows with an S, not one show, shows. I think we should call it Aralyn's Home Economics Presents.
Of course, I'm such an ideal tenant because I don't have a dog, I don't have any children, I'm just one person. You know, so I don't know. What should we do at this point? I mean, are you just feeling that you don't want to talk to me anymore about it, or should we? Okay, I finally got a hold of him. He answered the phone. Normally I get a tape machine, and he says that he doesn't want to rent to me because he doesn't get any warm and fuzzy feeling from me. Is this hilarious? We started talking about doing moving day because during the start of this process, found out I had to move from where I was. Come on into this messy house. My God, you're going to see what a house looks like when you're in the process of packing and moving. I got a pink slip from my landlord that said I had to move. So I thought, well, this play, this storytelling, this thing, whatever we're going to do is going on the back burner because I'm up to here in bubble wrap and boxes now. I figured we'll continue working on this, and then I'll move, and then we'll continue working on it, and we'll do these shows, you know, 6 months or a year, maybe. His mother, about his girlfriend, about going to parties. But she said, oh no, we're doing the first show in 30 days when you move. What? We can't do a show in 30 days, are you crazy? She said, we'll make the move the first show. I was like, what? We don't have time. There's not enough time. We can't get it together. I can't move and do that at the same time. Oh, no. On the 8th of August, 2010, when I move in, certain special friends in my life are going to be there. And I don't know how they're going to do it. They have to figure it out themselves, but they are going to, without me, arrange my house. And at 7 o'clock, I will do my first show in the series called Moving Day.
I dreamt last night the moon was so bright it melted the walls away. And it wasn't alarming when I saw Prince Charming come into my bedroom and say,
but this was a kitchen like none I've seen. Put a card in the slot and onto the screen pops a picture of just how your dish will look, plus all the ingredients you need to cook. The bride to feel tragic. The rest is push-button magic. So whether you bake or broil or stew, don't have to be chained to the stove all day. Just set the timer and you're on your way. Tick-tock, tick-tock, I'm free to have fun around the clock.
Time for the show. Everybody on stage.
They sent me my 3-month heart monitor, wear this EKG for a whole week. So it's one of the things that prompted me to get on with the show. But these mouse traps are really, really good. So now, no parents, no pets. I miss them, but I don't have them anymore. This might be the one thing I can't let go. This is my pig stuff. And I'm in another era, and I really need to let go of the past life, which is the pig stuff. But this is something I'm going to deal with about moving day, the problems that people have on giving up things that were their families or their mothers. Behind the sorrow. That are not the person or not the pet. But it's hard to give them up because it's kind of like giving them up again, or it's some kind of lack of respect for the time they spent with you. So I'm going to work on this part. 4, give me 7. Anything about 7? Do I hear one of the pretty ladies in the back? No, I'm going. Let the light shines for you. Now these guys. $7. I feel what I want to be and where I am right now is in my heart, and that's where I want to be. Thank you for coming. Yeah, they sing out for you and for me. This book is probably, because I'm in this book also, I have a full-page picture. And I think this book is where the Bedichek Junior High School kids got acquainted with me, because they decided to paint a mural of 4 people on the side of their building. And they wanted people who were inspirational to them. So I was one of those people. During the time that we were doing this, I was out there with the kids. I taught a class in creativity and art and all this kind of stuff, and I got acquainted with the teachers. One of them put me on the email list that she had, a little mail group. And she's 30 years old, so she's sending out all these music videos. Well, one day I got one and I thought, let me see this one. It was Rihanna, S&M. Well, Rihanna was that one that, her boyfriend beat her up and she couldn't perform in the Academy Awards. So I clicked on that video and it was like, wow, I can't believe this. Look at all those costumes. They're just fabulous. She was in cellophane. She was in leather. She had whips. She had those big high heels on that you can barely walk in. And she had men on a collar, and they were on all 4s. She was wrapped in ropes. She tied herself up. She tied other people up. There was a lot of things with ropes, and I was totally fascinated. Then my director came and we were going to plan the next show. And of course, I'm all excited about this video and I'm saying, you got to watch this. Watch this next part. I mean, is that music good? She would say, well, I was thinking maybe for the next show we might, watch this. It's going to be good, going to be good. And after a while, you know, it's like a broken record about this video. And she said, well, maybe if you're so intrigued and interested in this, maybe you ought to research it and we can do a show on it next time. I went, well, we're going to research it, but I'm not doing a show on it and ruining my reputation. I had sent that video to my lawyer friend, so I called him up and I said, have you seen that video? And he said, yes, I have. I said, is that mainstream? He said, well, it's mainstream. It's huge, it's big, but it's kind of a secret society. You know, not a lot of people know about it unless you're in it, but it's huge. I said, really, you know about this? He said, yes, because I was an assistant to a dominatrix when I put myself through law school. And I said, we have to talk.
She started interviewing Leo about what's legal, not just in the U.S., but particularly in Texas, because she was starting to think, oh, maybe if I become a professional dominatrix, it's a retirement option.
I went to graduate school in Houston, and I met a professional dominatrix in Houston, and that was a real education.
Oh yeah, oh no, 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 not like the other.
Dominatrix. Dominatrix. I don't know if I can spell it. Yeah, dominatrix. I spelled it right. D-O-M-I-N-A-T-R-I-X, and it's pronounced dominatrix. Dominatrix. It's a hard word. Dominatrix is a woman or mistress who takes the dominant role in a bondage or discipline, dominance and submissive, or BDSM. That's BD would be bondage, discipline, submissive, and masochism, I guess. I don't know. Canadian dominatrix Tara Jean Bedford, who was one of the 3 women who initiated an application to the Ontario Supreme Court seeking an invalidation of Canadian laws regarding brothels, sought to differentiate for clarity her occupation as a dominatrix rather than a prostitute to the media. They may take pride and differentiation in their psychological insight into their clients' needs and fetishes, as well as their technical ability to perform complex BDSM practices. So the dominatrix people seem to not want to be connected to the hookers.
I'm going home. Oh, wait a minute.
What I'm going to ask you in a minute when I'm done here is, after you've absorbed this information, I'm going to ask you how it's relevant to you.
Effectively, I have no sex life. So maybe this would be interesting, because I get to do theater. People have told me forever that I'm controlling and bossy. Well, it seems like that's a good criteria for a dominatrix, to be controlling and bossy. I don't know, actually it terrifies me, the idea of getting into this kind of what I consider the underworld.
In a public place, I'm forced to watch as you take on
But it also fascinates me to get into a world I haven't been in before, because that's how I've always had a lot of fun in my life, is to get into things that I wasn't familiar with. If I just stayed with things I was familiar with, I'd still be in Oklahoma.
We know that once a person is perverted, it is practically impossible for that person to adjust to normal attitudes in regard to sex. And thus, the grotesque costuming and the significance of the extreme spiked heel and the tight boot, the riding crop, rubber and leather garments, and all the rest.
I decided I'll take a class. So, I found a dominatrix class. And I called up the lady and I said, would you give me private lessons? And she said, yes, I would. We had our appointed time, and it was here in my apartment building, and she showed up. And I didn't know what to expect, but she was like a soccer mom. I mean, she was younger than me, very attractive, but, you know, simple hairdo, no makeup, simple clothes. And she works in a dungeon. So I was like, well, what's a dungeon? And she said it's a place where dominant, submissives, BDSM, all of that mixed match meets to do their thing. Mercy. And I was a professional, so I got paid. And I mentioned some kind of fee, and she said something like $200, but she said, it's the McDonald's of dungeons. If you have your own, you make a lot more money. The question is legally, if you collect money, are they going to put you in jail? I was thinking about it as a second career, a lot of flexibility, independent business owner, things of that nature. Secondly, kind of been there, done that with the sexual stuff that's been going on in my life. Generally, I'm pretty disgusted with men. I really do just want to take a whip and say bend over and just beat them to a pulp. It's like, grow up.
I thought she had very good instincts as a top. She had a good visual of herself, like she knew the kind of top that she wanted to be. Right. Well, working in the dungeon, we did not ever have sex with the clients. It was a legal licensed dungeon.
This is our Oriental room reserved for the exotic. And most of them are.
So we really had to mind our P's and Q's because Lady Hillary would be arrested for, pandering, I think. So there was no penetration, no touchy-feeliness even. And a lot of that was just our thing. We wanted our distance. It didn't mean that I wouldn't be nurturing, but this was not, the clients were not my lovers, and I didn't want anything that seemed that way.
The men that come for your services are very high profile. They are judges and they're legislators and lawyers, and they, come on lunch and they're on money suits, and then they take off.
Man, what a body.
The men who come to the dungeon, they're not looking to get laid. For them, their kink is more important to them than sex. They could have sex for free, most of them, I would imagine. The majority of my clients had relationships, so they were having sex at home, but presumably, I didn't ask. But their kink, that was something that, to them, a lot of them, it was more important than sex.
After the day's work and worries are done, what is more fun for a man than to come home to a quiet house with happy children and a loving spouse?
When I say kink, I just mean whatever it is that brought them there. If they want to be spanked, maybe they love feet and they want to spend time touching feet and they're too shy to ask their girlfriend if they can do that or whatever. It's just easier to go pay someone and just say, humiliate me, and and know that they can just be very open with what they want. A lot of the times it's stuff that they can't express in their regular relationship, and they thought maybe it would go away, and then as they got older it got stronger the longer they had to hide it.
Her arrival after her historic North Pole transit and her 6.5-day underseas crossing of the Atlantic is a memorable one. Commander William Anderson, skipper of the Nautilus, and Admiral Rickover share the spotlight. To our atomic submariners, the glory of the recent feats that reassert the Navy's leadership in the contest for supremacy under the sea.
I did not know at that time that Admiral Rickover would handpick my future husband to be in that nuclear-powered submarine force. Now, this was a very prestigious thing. When he went in, he got 2 years of special training on top of his 2 engineering degrees, and he got extra pay, he got promotions in rank, and he got cleared for top secret.
A special occasion made all the happier for the crew by the presence at dockside of their families. For 60 Navy wives, it's the first reunion with their far-traveling husbands since April.
They go out on patrol, so it's 3 months on, 3 months off, 3 months on, 3 months off. So it came time for Bill's first patrol. Oh my God, what am I going to do? Because I was totally scared. I mean, I'd never managed my own life by myself. I'd never lived alone. I had lived with my parents, and then I had gone to live with Bill. And so the first 3 months that he was gone, I barely went out of the house because I was afraid. I certainly never went out at night. Now on the second patrol, I started going to the officers club with the wives, and we had the luncheons, and we had the fashion shows, and we learned to play bridge. And in addition to that, unlike them, I went into the community, and I became an activist. I was a feminist, so I was lobbying for the ERA, equal pay for women, abortion rights. And I went to Planned Parenthood and was a volunteer counselor, as a birth control counselor, as an abortion counselor, helping people make the decision or not.
Well, I have known Aralyn since, I think, 1975. The Ladies Center, which is where Aralyn was the director, was a combination of services around reproductive rights. She hired me, basically, as a counselor.
As a result of being at Planned Parenthood as a volunteer, I knew about the clinic that was opening, and I actually became originally a counselor at the clinic, and then when the executive director left, I took her position.
Back then, there were a lot of things that made the work discouraging and hard.
Most of the time, I wore a button, and it had a hanger, and it said, "Stop illegal abortion." And the representatives and the senators many times would get up really close to me and really close to my button, and I would say, "It says stop illegal abortion," and they said, "Oh, I'm not looking at the button, I'm looking at your tits." That's the kind of stuff that was going on back then, because they had no respect for any woman who thought that abortion should be safe and legal for other women. They just thought we were sluts.
So I think those are some of the things that stand out for me. I also remember she was in the director's office with somebody. I can't remember if it was a salesperson or it was a man, and they were talking, and he handed her his business card, and she said, "You already given it to me." And he said, "Yeah, but you threw it away." She really tossed it into the trash can right in front of him. But I think so little moments like that I thought of, it sort of stayed with me, because there was a certain kind of decisiveness, I think, that's an important part of leadership.
And then, of course, I was protesting the Vietnam War. The CO told Bill that he should get his wife in check because she was doing some things she shouldn't be doing while he was out to sea. But I was having a great time with all these new friends and new adventures, and everything was just great. And Bill has surfaced. He will be home tomorrow. I quickly turned back into my loving slave role. And I started cooking 3 meals a day, everything from scratch. My house was so clean you could have eaten off the baseboards. And of course, I let Bill always be right. I remember looking at the closet and thinking, this is indicative of our relationship. His side of the closet's brown and black and beige and navy, and his hangers are 1 inch apart all the way down. My side of the closet, of course, has scarves and bracelets and belts and flower child colors, orange and purple and hot pink. One day, he looked in the closet and he said, "It looks like a clown lives here." Well, needless to say, after 9 years of marriage, the circus came to town, and I went with
I read the part where you're a Bette Midler with a whip, and it sounded intriguing, interesting, and I fantasized a lot about it.
When I come over, I want champagne, and I want it cold, and I don't want that cheap stuff.
Okay.
And I want a beautiful glass to drink out of.
Okay.
And I want you to drink out of a tin cup.
Okay.
All right? So until then, you get the tin cup or semblance of it. You get my beautiful glass. and have the champagne ready. And I want, is your car clean?
My car carries my two doors sometimes, so it's difficult at times, but I will clean it.
Okay, if I'm ever in that car, I don't want one whiff of dog smell.
Okay, there is no dog smell.
Okay. So, over and out, monkey bars. I will talk at you later.
Thank you, Mr. Company.
Bye now.
Bye.
Jesus Christ, I don't know, this is stupid. And you realize I had no idea what I was doing, and I had to fill out a profile that said things like, do you prefer ropes or handcuffs? I picked one. That's pretty much how the whole profile went. But here's what I said. Dominatrix wannabe. Looking for willing, submissive playmate. Slave who knows how to look, beg, but not touch, except on special occasions. Bette Midler personality with a whip. Looking for a quirky, offbeat looking slave. I put down my age, and I was ready to sign my name, and I said, people don't put their real names in there. Like I said, the one thing I don't want is, front page headlines. Aralyn Hughes murdered being dominatrix in Kinky Man's house in Westlake. She was earning $3.50 an hour. Well, it's just like that guy. What was that guy, Carradine?
David Carradine.
David Carradine. They found him in a hotel room with his penis and balls and a rope tied up, and
oh dear,
it was on all the papers. And I was thinking, that's the one thing I don't want to happen to me.
Who's gonna
Well,
care
my
if it
brother could argue that I lost my mind and he could give my money to the church. My brother emailed me one time and he said, I wish that you would change those atheist viewpoints that you have, because I would like to have you in heaven with me when I die. I've never quite bought that heaven thing. It seems too simple to me. I think the mystery of what happens is much bigger, and I've always been curious that everybody wants to spend so much time arguing about how it's going to be when you die. So I wrote back and I said, if there's a heaven, I'll be there, but I'll probably be late. I got busy with the rest of my life, didn't think about it too much more, and a day or so, I said, well, maybe I ought to check. Maybe somebody's even left me a voicemail, or that they have written me an email. Well, I checked. There were 5 responses. Shut up. So I called. Hello, this is Ishtar. And this booming, like JFK back from the dead, started talking to me. He had had a business in Boston, he had sold it and done well, and said he could live anywhere in the world, but he was coming to Austin, Texas. He drove up in a brand new Mercedes. He was extremely well dressed, well groomed, and actually quite pleasant. In the conversation, I started to realize, I think this guy wants a girlfriend or a wife. I'm not sure he wants me. So I said to him, you aren't going to get laid. And he said, well, what's the point if I'm not going to get laid? And I said, well, what you need is a prostitute.
I remember thinking, hold on to that, that's great. Because it takes a while to get to know yourself as a dom, and there's a lot of women who go into the business young, and they're not really grown up yet.
As we were kind of finishing, I said, well, I'll just have to decide what I'm going to do. And she said, well, just tell you a couple of things. One, these submissive men love older women. Qualified. Now, that left me with 2 keepers. Keeper number 1. As the dom said, total different scenario, totally different man. He wrote me and he said, I would love to chat with you and talk with you, and especially I want to talk about Oklahoma, because I had said something in my profile. I had put this picture on my profile because I didn't want to put a real picture of me, so I put a little high school picture, and I thought, oh my God, it's one of my classmates. He told me about a fantasy that he had, that someday in some situation some woman would just kidnap him and take him in her house and make him her slave. So when we got to his house, I said, put my bag inside, and I want you to go and stand out in the middle of the yard, knock softly. I'll answer when I feel like it.
Do you want to come in? Yes. I can't open the door now. I'm in my nightie.
All right. I'll wait till you take it off.
I had taken my clothes off, only had my underwear on, and I had this beautiful silk robe on, and I had my ruby shoes. He knocked on the door, I opened the door, and he said, you know, my car's broken down. He had a big smile on his face, and he said, I'd like to use your phone. And I said, oh, I was just kind of waking up from a nap. I was getting ready to take a bath, and my husband's out of town. I don't really know if I should let you come in. But I know you need to use the phone, so come on in. As soon as we went in, slammed the door, and I said, make my bath. And I don't want it too hot or too cold. It's going to be just perfect, or you are going to pay. Do you understand? He said, yes, goddess. He was kind of like a puppy. You know, he needed a lot of training.
Her ideas about the way to treat people, like had a natural flair for it. And not because I know she will describe herself as a control freak, but that's not why I think that she is a good top. But I think being intuitive is really great. Really caring about your sub is really important. And she also has such a flair for drama, and so that's nice too, to kind of create the whole experience. And plus with her background, just creating environments or experiences, that's part of it too. So she had a lot of things going into it, a lot of strengths.
To confirm that time, or on that morning of the 12th. Keeper number 2. He was 44 years old. Lifestyle, meaning that he lived his life this way. And his chosen style was to be a submissive. He was an athlete. He traveled for business and was in Austin a lot and stayed at either the W or the Four Seasons. He was in some financial arenas, which I found out later, places that you and I will never go or know about, and he said confidentiality was key. 5-ish, you know, maybe sometime between 5 and 6. He said, I look forward to meeting you, Goddess Ishtar. But I do have a question. Yes, Goddess Ishtar, what are the rules? Rules! I didn't know no rules! I don't think of anything at the moment. Let me think about it, and I may let you know by email or by phone call. Okay?
The use of rules in the S&M lifestyle world were very quickly going to be a transformative experience for Aralyn.
I might become your loving partner under the proper circumstances, but I won't become your sparring partner. So lay out the rough stuff, huh? I'm not Joan Robinson, and I don't...
It gave her a whole new awareness about how she wanted to design, not just her sessions, or how to put her show together about the sessions, but more significantly, how she was choosing to create and design a particular lifestyle for herself in her everyday world.
All right, I'll talk to you then before, and see you on the 12th around 5, between 5 and 6. Bye-bye now.
Sure, bird in my window tells me tomorrow, me no tornado carries me off. Yeah, pulls me from bed and bashes my head and no buries me halfway across the globe. But hold me long till I belong. Yeah, oh, without all of the sun, lucky skin.
So I arrived at the hotel, and I called him on the phone. And I said, I'm downstairs.
This shouldn't look
want your room number, and then I want you to put a key outside the door.
Without all of the sun-lucky skin.
I want you to take all your clothes off, and I want you to be sitting naked in a chair facing the wall away from the door when I arrive. Yes, Goddess Ishtar. He was as I had directed. I put on my outfit. He knew I was there. I mean, you can't wear those get-ups up and down the halls of the W Hotel. And of course, I couldn't walk that far in those shoes anyway. So I get myself ready, and I walk up and I get real close to the back of his head, and I say, Goddess Ishtar is here in the room. Then I didn't say anything for a while, but I noticed that he was shivering. And I was thinking, is he cold? Is he scared? But I was kind of curious about my protective nature that came out. It's like I wanted to take care of him. I'd never had kids, but it's like, I think this is like a motherly instinct. I wanted to make sure he was comfortable. But I proceeded on, and I was curious whether he was married. I don't know why, it didn't make any difference. And so I said, are you married? And he said, no, Goddess. Tell me the truth, I want the truth. He said, I'm telling you the truth, I'm not married. Why not? He said, because I haven't found the right girl yet. Oh, I was thinking, oh my God, I know so many women who want to go out with this guy. He has a job, and he's physically fit. He's a triathlete guy, you know? Oh. I proceeded to play games with him, and of course there was a lot of conversation. He told me that he had had a dominatrix, and that they were in a lifestyle coupling situation, and they had been for 2 years, and that she had had him in bondage for 2 years. I said, well, tell me more about that. And he said, I was in a cock cage for 2 years. I could tell when he talked about her that he missed her, and that he was sad that she was not there and that she had left. And I felt sad for him because of that loss that I witnessed. I continued to play games with him, and what happens is I wanted him to be happy, I wanted him to be entertained, I wanted him to have an experience. And so I created the fact that we would go through 7 gates into the underworld, and we played that game just like kids. We would go to the gate, and we would create what was behind the gate, and we would go in, and we would see different things. And it was really fun. I had him blindfolded a lot of the time, but I was curious how protective I was. I didn't want him to run into anything. I didn't want him to fall down. I was like, had to be I wanted to take care of him, but yet I wanted to have fun. And I was thinking, this is a tough role to play. But it was a fulfilling one, because I got to be everything I ever wanted to be. I got to be the lead actress. I got to be the director. I got to be the screenwriter. When it came time to leave, I said to him, I want you to clean up this room from all the game playing we did. And I waited on the sofa with my feet, with those heels. I had them right up there, just waiting, watching him do all the work and clean up that room. And I said, I want you to dress. He said, what do you want me to wear? I said, well, bring me out 3 outfits and I'll pick. I said, get the casual outfit. He went in the other room, he put it on, he came back out, and I'm thinking, is he cute or what? I mean, he's got those little shorts, he's got the little white shoes, look like they've never been worn. He went with me downstairs, and it was time for me to leave. And I looked him in the eye, and I thought, wow, how can I thank you? I didn't say it, I just thought it. But how could I possibly thank him for the gift that he gave me, the experience that I had? And he was so available, he was so honest, he was so there, he was so present. But I got in the car and I left, because I felt like that was what I needed to do as the dominatrix. The next day he called me and he said, permission to speak. Go ahead. He said, I just want to know if you were pleased with me yesterday. And I wanted to go, please, my God, it was the experience of a lifetime. It was the role. It was so much fun. I learned so much. It was so great. But I said, yes, everything was adequate. Is there anything else? And he said, I would like permission to touch your property. My mind was going. He saw that I owned him, that I possessed him, and he was my slave or my submissive, and that he had to get approval to do anything, approval to have an orgasm. So I said, well, go ahead. It didn't take that long. I started thinking, I'm a natural at this. I was bossy as a kid, and I think it served me well. I just think this dominatrix role may be the thing for me. About that time, a dominatrix friend of mine called and said, I'm going to the BDSM conference in Denver, Colorado. Do you want to go? I thought about it and I said, of course I want to go. So I went to the conference. The entire place was secure. You could only get in with a badge, which I had because I had got one before I came. And they occupied the whole hotel. It was just like any conference. The people there were just like any people that would be attending a conference. There were PhDs that were lecturing on all different kinds of things.
I've seen some of the experiments shown in this film actually carried out.
Things like torture, rape play, saline injections, and ritual.
As you can imagine, technique is everything.
But then I went into the 10,000 square feet of dungeon space. This is a place where S&M activities can occur. There was all kinds of things going on. There was a woman that was on a cross, a huge cross. She was naked, and they had cellophaned her all the way around and put her hanging up in the air. And she seemed in total bliss. I had an opportunity to go to a ritual, and I decided to go. When I went to the door, they said, if you come in, you cannot leave. You must be absolutely silent and not move the entire time, not make any sound. And I agreed, and I went in. Everyone sat in the room like this. Pretty soon, these two men came in, and there was a dominant man and a submissive man. They were regular people like you would see as a school principal or anybody walking down the street. And what was going to happen was that they had agreed that they were going to put hooks in the back of in the muscle in his back, right back here, and lift him off the ground. I saw an intimacy between those two men that I've never witnessed before. And pretty soon, the ropes were pulled, and that guy with the hooks in his back went off into the air. He was swinging up in the air, and he was laughing and smiling. He was in total bliss. He was euphoric. I couldn't believe it. It was like, I want that, but I don't want those hooks. How am I going to do this? I don't want the brutality, because I just don't like pain, and that just doesn't do anything for me. I don't want to be sexual in that way. I mean, ever since Mr. Kirkpatrick, I was always clear that I didn't ever want to give up my power there. I was visiting my mother. She was approximately 80, and I was probably 50 at the time. She was reading the paper, and she said, "Do you remember Mr. Kirkpatrick?" "Yes, I remember Mr. Kirkpatrick. What about him?" "Well, he died up in Tulsa." "Well, good riddance. He should have died years ago. He was full of the devil. He was an evil person. I don't know why God didn't strike him dead long ago. I hope he goes to hell, and I hope he burns to a crisp." It was like a tornado came in the room, or the room turned white. She said, "I do not know why you get your panties in such a wad about Mr. Kirkpatrick. You always did. He was nothing but lovely to you, and he gave you lovely gifts." And I thought to myself, yeah, he gave me gifts. Gifts I didn't need, and gifts I didn't want, and gifts I would have to carry around for the rest of my life. never did tell my mother what happened. I mean, I just wanted to protect her from that. She was an incredible cook. She was always in the kitchen. And I remember one day when she was making all these cookies and packaging them up in little paper plates to give away. And she said, here, take one of these plates to Mr. Kirkpatrick next door. So I went over and knocked on the door. He answered the door, and I said, we have cookies for you. And he said, would you like to come in for a Dr. Pepper? I love Dr. Pepper. That was my favorite. So I went inside. I'd never been inside his house before, and there was a big grandfather clock, and I was totally fascinated by how that worked. And I knew there was going to be something coming out soon. But then Mr. Kirkpatrick shut the drapes in the kitchen, and he turned off the lights, and he pulled me down on his lap. I tried to get up, but he was holding me too tight. I knew something was wrong. He put his tongue in my mouth, and he put his hand down my shirt. I had a little ruffled shirt on, I remember it. And he put his hands down my little shorts that had an elastic waistline. And he spoke to me in a really, really odd voice, and he said, I love you. Don't you love me? Tell me that you love me. And he said, this is our little secret. You're not to tell anyone about this. Promise me that you'll never tell. I don't know how many times I was over there, and I don't know how long this went on. I just don't remember.
Do you think this type of thing can really happen?
There's no question that it happens every day, and probably happens more often than we know. While this was the depiction of an individual case, we know that the statistics, such as they are minimum statistics. This happens too often.
Are families aware of this?
Yes, families are aware of it, but far too often they're not aware of it until it's too late, until they're left with the grief and confusion and the guilt. After there's not anything else they can do, it's already happened.
Suppose we look at some of the scenes in the film we've just seen and discuss this further.
On the way home in the airplane, I started thinking, you know, maybe I'm just a Tupperware version of a dominatrix. And I just couldn't imagine myself being submissive to anyone because I'd spent my whole life trying to be a good feminist. And I just couldn't understand how I would be like with a collar, like acting like a dog and barking. I just couldn't do that. But what I did want is I wanted the emotional surrender that I saw them have. And I wanted a relationship that was caring and attentive like I saw there. The dom I was with said, if you want to be at the top of your game as a dominatrix, one thing you have to do is to play the submissive role. Well, I had just gone through my mind why I probably couldn't ever do that, but I like to be at the top of my game. I like to be the best of anything I'm going to do. How was I going to do that? When I got home, I went to a party and I met this guy and I told him I was doing a show on XXX, BDSM, and I figured he'd be appalled and run out the door, but he continued to talk to me. See? There.
Killed him. Did we get the whole situation? Because I thought.
Okay.
Well, it looks like right on cue the fly was bringing attention to the fly.
Yes. He was a filmmaker. He was a friend of a friend, and he knew what I was talking about. I could tell by his conversation that he had experience with what I was talking about.
It was called the Texas Student League for Responsible Sexual Freedom. It wasn't just the Sexual Freedom League. You had to be responsible. But I was still a student at the University of Texas, and it was an official organization at the university. I was co-chairman. The other co-chairman was a gay male. And we were trying to bring people's attention to the fact that same gender preference individuals are still citizens and should have the same rights as everybody else.
Tell you what, you lay one finger on one of my girls, and I swear to God, I'll wrap this chain around your neck and shove it down your throat.
Good Christ, a lesbian. We also were very, very much for women's rights. I mean, at that time, female students had strict curfews no matter where they lived. We were in favor of the birth control being provided by the health center, which of course is very much in the news these days.
But I thought, you know, he's somebody I can trust. I think I could be submissive with him. And I'll just do the emotional surrender, not the sex and not the brutality. And I made my list of rules, the way things would go down, and I sent them to him by email. And he emailed back and said, no, thank you. I went, you can't say no thank you to a dominatrix. What are you thinking? But then I realized his saying no was probably the start of a game. He was denying me what I wanted. And also, he was not going to accept the fact that if I was going to play the submissive role and he was going to be dominant, that I was going to be making and sending the rules. I could maybe agree to the rules, but I didn't make the rules. And then I started thinking, you know, there is somebody that I'm submissive to, totally submissive to. I forgot. This person bosses me around, tells me what to do, when to do it, and I do it. And I try to do it right, and I try to do it just like she says, and I try to please her, and I want to make her happy. And I realized that my director, I'm submissive to her creatively. And I'm submissive to her because I trust her. And because I know that she's going to be there with me in my triumphs as well as my failures.
She's so willing. She wants to be such the good girl.
And Aralyn, just so you know, for the share back, it's important to just hear the feedback. I mean, it's not that you can't respond, but normally we let the, just because if you have questions, you can ask.
And I know that she is doing everything she can to make me happy and to see that I get what I want. So yes, I can be submissive. It's not impossible. After one of my shows, a friend of mine came up to me and said, I wish you could be as vulnerable as you are on stage with me personally. And I know that's the opposite of how most people are. They'd be more vulnerable on a one-to-one than they would like up in front of a stage of people. But for me, I'm much more secure and much safer to be who I am and be seen on stage than I am on a one-to-one basis. I don't need any relationship. I don't need any man. I don't need that little Noah's Ark routine. I don't need the bonding and the sugar and the sap and all that stuff. But in the back of my mind, I was thinking, I still want one. The filmmaker friend had been over at my house, and we were having dinner, and he picked up this book on the coffee table. And I was in the kitchen, and I yelled out, and I said, I'm on page 30 in that book. Page 30.
It's a photograph of her, and then right opposite of her is Herndon, and whoever the photographer was didn't know who it was. And I'm seeing now, you know, she doesn't know who, oh, I know that guy, that's Herndon X. And I had his phone number even.
Well, I was so glad to have the mystery solved because I was so tired in the last 5 years of having people say, oh, that's a cute picture of you, Aralyn. Who's this guy? And I go, somebody with the Hells Angels, I think. And they go, that's cute, Aralyn. Who is this guy? I think he's a serial killer on Congress Avenue. Who's this guy? And I finally said one time, he looks like one of those guys from the BDSM conference.
I got online to check my emails in one of my email accounts, and I saw this name that was strange and different.
You and I have a mutual friend, the filmmaker, and I am that woman that's been laying on top of you for the last 5 years in this book. And he wrote back, what book?
It's moving day. Pack your bowling bed and get away. If you
you spent every cent you can live out in a tent. It's moving day.
I was moving again. I was moving out of my apartment. So my director and Pearl came over and we started planning the next show. And I was telling her, you know, I just haven't been able to give up this submissive thing with a man. I think I want to do it, but I don't want all that pain. I don't want any sex, and I just don't know. And I just went on and on about it. And she said, well, what about Spider Johnson? He is an iconoclast. He's an artist. He's a musician. He's a person of integrity. She said, I introduced you to him at the living room, storytelling for grown-ups, a couple of weeks ago. And I said, I remember. She said, well, he's kind of wanting to get out of the box, do something different. He may want to do some performing. He might be a candidate. It's like you're in a box. Why don't you get out of that thing?
Okay.
My mother said never hang out with a boy that doesn't have a pocket. And she asked him, and he was willing. So the next thing I know, we are on stage, and we are doing and introducing Relationship by Design.
We decided to set up a structure to this process. And over the next 6 months or so, we committed to spend 100 hours together.
Is this real? Sure sounds real. But I tried to stay very optimistic and look at this thing and at the whole view of it.
And I spotted him. He was there.
I thought it was so interesting, and I was wondering how the people around me were reacting.
I had told him about my show because we talked about creativity and our passion for the arts and everything, but I didn't think he would show up. But he was there, and I thought, is he interested in me? No. He's here to support my creative endeavors because he's an artist and he understands. So I went over and I said, I am so glad you're here.
She came into the room and it was like a ray of light walking in, you know. And she come over and gave me this hug. And it was like, wow, tremendous hug.
Wow. What am I going to do with this?
And she had said something that stuck with me stuck with me till today. She says, don't believe everything you see and hear.
After all this bravado that I've been saying for months, you know, I'm now a canvas and I get up and I paint my life on the canvas in front of an audience. My life is my art is my life. Everything you see is real and honest. I said to him, now, because Spider, see, and I'm going to be doing this Relationship by Design, so I said, look, you know, remember this is just a show. Just a show. Don't believe everything you see.
Yeah, here I am, and I meet this woman. I've been in a book with her, and we're talking about all this, and it's leaving my mind with, are there possibilities, or is this coincidence, or what's going on here? And then she's talking about going into a relationship with this man.
All right, do we have any parting words?
Wish us luck.
The reality about this by design is that can we operate in our lives with all this going on?
About that time, I got a phone call. It was the guy from the W Hotel. And he said, I have given it a lot of thought, and I would really like to be partnered with you in a lifestyle, dominant, submissive relationship.
All of this unlucky skin, and without all of this unlucky skin.
The experience in that world, in that universe, changed my life. I learned so much. I'm so much more open, I'm less judgmental. It seems embarrassing to me. It's kind of like I'm a little embarrassed to say yes. A little embarrassed to have people know that after all this cranking about men all these years, that now I've got one I like.
Here, my mystery date.
He and I continued to see each other, and we spent New Year's Eve together, and by mistake I kind of kissed him, but nothing else had happened. Nothing else had happened. And one day I just popped the question. I said, would you consider being in a relationship by design with me? I said, well, write down 5 things that you want out of a relationship, and I'll do the same. Number 1 on his list was love. I thought, oh my God, I'm not very good at that. But I'm gonna do it.
This heart of mine keeps decent time. Though my ears may be weak and my eyes may be all but blind.
Now my list was totally different. Mine had number 1, in 6 months we'll reevaluate, because I always like loopholes. I want to be able to know I can get out at any time. Also on my list was that I wanted sexuality to be off the table. It always complicates everything. We're too old for sex anyway. And because of Mr. Kirkpatrick, again, I don't like, to worry about that stuff and worry that every time I touch somebody's hand, his hand or something, that he's gonna like come on to me or do something like that. I just didn't want to deal with that. I just wanted to get to know him. And he said, well, I'm much more interested in knowing you than I am about that. I thought, well, that's interesting. And suddenly I felt very safe, and I felt very secure, and I felt very trusting. And I jumped his bones that night. I went to my painting group, and they proceeded to ask me about him. In this painting group, I am the oldest one in there. They're probably in their 40s and 50s, and I'm in my 60s, and they were saying, well, tell us about this guy, Do you think you're gonna have sex with him? And I went, maybe you already have. And they just went, we can't stand it, you're kidding! Really? I mean, they just went bonkers, and I was thinking, what is this? And what this is about is people who are younger do not see people who are in their 60s, like me, often the age of their parents, as being sexual people. It's like, that just doesn't fit.
After the show, we're gonna all let it all hang out.
It surprises me that I can't wait to see him again. I can't wait to get my hands on him. And I can't wait to just kiss him all the time. I mean, I'm like I'm 12 years old again. Where did that come from? Why him?
And what did the text that he just sent you say?
It said kisses. And I looked in his eyes and I thought to myself, beyond a shadow of a doubt, I have my eyes person. What I like about painting and about being on stage and about sex is that it is one of those few times in my life where I am totally focused. Nothing on the outside is distracting. Nothing else other than what's in my focus at the moment makes any difference. It is a freedom that makes me soar, and I can't create it in the moment. I can only get there by putting myself in a place where I might go there. That's on stage. That's starting a painting, meaning to put the paint on the canvas. Or the sexual thing, where all the awkwardness and all the initial craziness is past. And I'm in the moment, in the moment, in the moment. I'm doing this movie, and it's in process, and It's about me being a survivor of the 60s and now being in my 60s where there's no role model for relationships or women because many of us didn't have children, etc., etc. I knew something was going to jump out of it. Hopefully it's universal that everyone will identify because they've had the same issues. But we got a problem with the end of the movie. We can't get an end because I entered into a relationship with this guy. We thought maybe that was it, that would be the end of the relationship and that I rode off into the sunset. Everyone loves a love story. Wouldn't that be wonderful? But of course, a year later, before we get the film done, I run him off. So now we don't have an ending. Having a dad like I did has been a real problem with me and other men because I could never get the trust, the love, and the security that I felt with my dad from them.
I said, you just want to be a dominatrix all the time.
And some people call that lifestyle. They do
Yeah,
find a
that's
submissive
a
partner.
lifestyle.
So I guess that you're not a willing submissive in the lifestyle world.
I guess that's what you would say.
Because
Come on,
a
you're
submissive would be perfectly okay with her telling him exactly what to do, how to do it, when to
If you were submissive, we wouldn't have these problems. That's the truth of it. Right or wrong, or proper or not proper, or whatever light it sheds on me. And once again, on the turn of a dime, it's over. And it's like you look at that person and go, who is that? I don't know who they are. They're just like somebody on the street. What I present on stage is who I really want to be, and I'm still not that comfortable in doing it on a one-to-one basis, particularly with men. A lot of people think I've gone off the deep end. You know, I'm ruining my reputation. I've just gone wacky in my old age, and I'm spending my money recklessly now, making a documentary movie, doing all these shows and traveling all around. What the heck am I doing? What's that about?
We've touched on it earlier. It has to do with the meaning of death. Death in the very largest sense. For the citizen seeing this film as we've seen it asks himself the question, what can I do about this? Well, the one thing he can do is to break down the taboos that we've had up to now about talking about death, and to recognize that although death is an intensely personal matter, it has enormously ramified social implications.
I think, well, when I die, I'll have friends. You know, they'll kind of help me walk, or maybe come see me in the hospital and see if I have cashews or something that I like. But the reality is, I really feel that I'm probably going to die with people around me that have never known me. And you know what? They're going to like me just as much as the people who know me a long time. Because they're going to see me at my real self, for sure. When you're dying, no pretenses.
It just is so frustrating, you know, that you see people, I see myself, I see other women reinventing the wheel, not knowing that they have companionship, that they could learn, that they have role models.
You are looking live right now inside the Texas Senate chamber, where a rising star in the Democratic Party has been talking non-stop since 11 this morning. She hasn't even had a bathroom break. Senator Wendy Davis's filibuster aims to kill a controversial bill some say could nearly close all of the state's abortion clinics.
I just walked into the Capitol Rotunda and I burst into tears. Seeing all those people on all three levels and the amount of power. And in some ways I didn't want to come because I thought, you know, I've done my share of this fight. It's time for other people to do it. And I don't need to be there. But then when I got here, I realized that I have to be here. This is my fight. It's been my fight forever.
Our brains are organized on stories, on narrative. We go a little crazy if our stories are not told, or if we can't hear our stories confirmed by parallels, in other people. At every level, it's life-saving, it's justice-saving, it's everything.
Number one, I don't want to be naked. No, certainly not in the light. I mean, I just don't want to parade around naked, and I don't do that. I wear clothes, even in my own house by myself.
She goes to her art to find the freedom that she wants to embody in her everyday life. I think of it as a metaphor for putting yourself out there as an artist in performance. It's a stripping down process. You're stripping down to the core of who you are, what you're afraid of. You're dealing up front with the panic and all the shame of the body so that you're free. Once and for all, you can put your original face that we're all born with back on. It's the blank canvas where anything is possible.
She says, wake up, it's no use.
I challenge myself to be seen and to be vulnerable on stage because I feel like it gives permission to other people to do the same. And I think that's what we have to do to save our world. People have to be truthful with each other, and they have to be willing to be seen for who they are. And if I can do it, they can do it. And that's why I'm up there.
Naked as we came, one will spread our ashes round the yard. She says, if I leave before you, darling, don't you waste me in the ground. I lay smiling like our sleeping children. One of us will die inside these arms. Eyes wide open, naked as we came. One will spread our ashes round the yard.
I tasted sweet when I